Welcome to our January guest artist reception. My name is Jason Jaspersen. I'm a professor of art here at Bethany Lutheran College. We do this on a monthly basis here in the gallery of the Ylvisaker Fine Arts Center. And we do this for the benefit of the campus community, the students, and also the extended Bethany family. We welcome you all here to maybe be enriched, to discover something. One of the taglines of the studio art department is "Discover what God has given you," and we hope to explore the possibilities of what a life could be. So tonight we're graced with the presence of Jeff Moody, who is trained as an industrial designer and currently has set up a new shop not far from here where he designs original furniture and builds it with great care. Tonight, I'll be talking with Jeff. I'll kind of be prompting, and if anybody has a question throughout our discussion, feel free to raise your hand and speak up a question, and we'll see how that goes. And if nobody's brave enough, maybe at the end we'll make sure that there's some time. Okay? Here we go. Well, first of all, Jeff, would you give us a little glimpse in the past, your education?
Right. As you said, I'm trained in industrial design. I went to college for industrial design in Denver. It was kind of something I stumbled upon that combined my love for art and my love for craft. And it's, if you guys don't know, it's basically the design of everyday things, from products to shoes to automobiles to furniture, which is my specialty. It was an interesting kind of, especially things like game and toy design, product design. You learn a lot about a lot of different things that maybe you didn't realize. Somebody sits down with a pen and paper and comes up with these ideas, for all these things that we have in our daily lives. So that was my education background.
Okay, and then how would you describe a day in the life?
Of me or of an industrial designer?
Of you now.
Of me now. Oh boy. I still work with Cala up in New Ulm. So the days of the week that I drive up to New Ulm, wake up, get the kids on the bus, hop in the car, cruise through the country for a little while, and I get to do woodworking all day up there, which is great. Mm-hmm. That's my favorite part of the whole thing, is being in the shop, being a woodworker. That's 2 or 3 days a week typically for me.
Cal is a woodworking business.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was here last year for Cala's Woodworking Company. I'd worked there all of 3 months, I think, and Harold had me come here with Joe and represent his furniture company. So I guess this is my second rodeo here at the college. Yeah, I guess I should have included that part. But
okay, so you're in New Ulm, you're working at this furniture company.
And I love that. That's like my therapy, being in the shop. I don't have any of the issues with running a business or dealing with sourcing materials or hitting deadlines. I just show up and I do woodworking, and it's lovely. I love it.
But to be clear, that's not this.
That's not this. No, it's a different thing entirely. We do, right now we're doing a lot of kitchen cabinets. We do architectural installations, like architectural kind of moldings and different kind of figurative things that get installed in a big space like this. I'm working on some furniture right now, but yeah, day in, day out there, it's just woodworking, which is really cool.
So when does this happen?
This happens after the kids go to bed, and I think you and I were just talking about this before we started the interview. Cook supper, eat supper, put the kids down, go start a fire in the shop, and get to work. And get in 3 or 4 hours at night. work on the weekends. The days that I'm not up in New Ulm, you get up, same thing, start the fire, get the shop warmed up, split some wood.
When you say start a fire, we're not frustrated and burning our shop down.
Oh, we are definitely frustrated.
Oh, okay.
That's why you split the wood too.
Okay,
yeah.
It heats you more than once, right?
Exactly, yeah, that's the old saying. But that's kind of the process, and it's been like a cathartic thing for me to get out there and to start your day, a cold day especially, by building a fire. Kind of, it gets the day rolling in a kind of a spiritual way. It's hard to explain, but once you have that shop warmed up, I'm ready to go. Like it's kind of just the beginning, like having a cup of coffee in the morning or something like that. So
it's become a habit.
Yeah, starting the fire is metaphorical and literal as far as working in the shop.
So does it feel like you're easing into your work?
Yeah. At the same time, though, you're splitting wood. So as easy as that is.
When you say starting a fire, you're talking about splitting and then starting?
Both, yeah.
Okay.
You want to get it going first, right? You want to get that flue warmed up. You want to have a little fire going in there. Go in the other room, you split some wood, you come load that fire up, and it's kind of a process that gradually goes throughout the day.
You just mentioned, right, I'm making a connection here. You mentioned that process, and we talked about, when we were installing the work, we talked about your design process. Segue. Can we talk about how you get ideas?
Starting the fire. Is that the segue?
Is that your answer?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think, sometimes you go in there and you start the fire and the fire goes out. and you got to maybe start it again.
Is this a metaphor now?
Nope, it's both. I mean, it really happens. You start the fire and the fire goes out, or you'll be inspired and kind of the inspiration starts kind of rolling through your mind, and you might put down some sketches and that fire might go out. You can revisit it and throw some more wood on. That's where the design process starts. It's with something that invigorates you, that makes you passionate. For me, I would say it's something that sparks something.
Do you have a notebook on you right now?
I do.
Can we see your notebook?
I just started a fresh one today. How embarrassing. There's nothing even in this
That's
one.
fine. I mean, you're just producing it.
Yeah.
It starts to tell a story.
But yeah.
So what does that notebook do? I know this, but I think we should know this. What does that notebook do, and then what does it lead to? How does that lead to that?
Right. Yeah, this is the spark in here. This is like the middle of the night, or... Yeah, and
We've got these around the
see
room.
them around the room. Everything that's in here and pieces that aren't in here can mostly be traced back to this little notebook. And this is the spark. This is where the fire starts. And if I don't have this on me, it's something else that you and I discussed as we were setting up this gallery. You have your phone. You can type it into your phone. Pull it out, pull up your notes app and start typing. But by the time you do that, you're like, oh, I have a text message. Let me just check that. And then 5 minutes later, why did I take my phone out? So I keep this little thing on me, and I have my little 4-color pen here because it's retro and I love it. And it helps me record things in different colors, give them gravity. And yeah, I just write down my ideas. I like to sketch them out a lot of times. Saves me time from, oh, here's this idea, blah, 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 or I could just draw a simple picture. So this is the spark here. This is what the notebook does. It's the spark. And then sometimes the fire catches immediately. Sometimes this goes directly to, I'll start putting in sketchbook pages, or I'll go out to the shop and start making little maquettes like this, little study models of things. But what eventually happens is I'll fill this up. And I've filled a lot of these up.
You sent me a photo.
I think it was 79.
It was 78, but you completed one in the last 2 days.
So 79. And when I get to the end of a month or two, I'll pull out this notebook and sit on my couch with my bigger sketchbook and just flip through and say, is this idea worth anything? Is this idea worth anything? And just kind of flesh those ideas out. And sometimes they snowball from there, sometimes they kind of just stop. But yeah, this is an essential part of my design process.
And then?
And then you see a lot of...
We're not here yet.
You see a lot of other stuff around here that's not beautiful furniture, things like plywood templates, things like larger sketches and CAD files. The design process kind of meanders depending on the piece. Sometimes it's really streamlined and it just goes point A, point B, point C, finished furniture. But often it's kind of dependent on the piece I'm building, how that process progresses from there.
There was another book. You had a sketchbook.
Right. And that's where ideas are kind of expanded. In a larger format, I have kind of mind maps like you'll see on some of these pages where the idea grows. Sometimes it grows, sometimes it's condensed. You know what I mean? Sometimes this broad concept is condensed into a piece. Sometimes it grows into a bigger undertaking. It just depends. It's a very organic process. But you can see, I know you're about to ask me, and then. So the next and then.
Okay.
The next and then is we get to these full-size prototypes here. You have a beautiful piece of furniture, and then you have
Where are you pointing at?
well, like a piece of furniture made out of 2x4s and plywood I found in the barn. That's the next step in the process.
The bench over here?
The bench is a good example of that, yeah. My wife was certain that my design for that bench was about 1 foot too long. So I built a prototype, and sure enough, I cut it down by about 1 foot. So that's kind of how we ended on that. It's helpful for me to build, and I think for clients as well, to see something in their space that's full size, even if it's made out of 2x4s. I think it's nice to have that. And then you can sit on it, say, hey, can I put my boots on this bench? Is it too tall? How about for the kids? How does this relate to the space? So that's the next step in the process.
Do you do it every time?
No, you can see behind us we have this silly, I just drew this out full size in the shop. This was my reference for this piece. It's a little impractical to build a full cabinet as a prototype, but just time and money-wise.
Too many parts.
Yeah, and I've made a lot of case goods similar to this, so I kind of had an idea of where I was going with it. But this was my reference for this piece. And you can see I did a couple studies for the pull, for the door, for the leg. This was kind of extrapolated from the console table over there, that leg design. So yeah, it's all a process, but it doesn't necessarily follow the same path every time.
Somebody was helping me put this up to install, and she asked, why did he draw on this big board?
Well, it was white, and drawing on it was very clear to me what it would look like. I started drawing it on just a piece of regular plywood, and I set it up in the side of my shop. I couldn't see what was going on. And I had this left over from setting up my vacuum bag, and I said, well, let's just draw it out on this. It was literally setting on my bench. So I just threw out some dimensions and drew it out in pencil and then overlined it with some permanent marker. And it gave me a good visual representation of what this piece would look like in real life.
Now, something like this, do you rely on this for a measurement? Like, is this sort of your master that you can transfer measurements to?
Yes. A problem that I have, and maybe a lot of furniture makers I know, as you're building it, as you're building the piece, you start second guessing yourself, like, oh, what if I did this? What if I did that? If you have a reference, if you've explored it in a 2D way or even a 3D way like that, like the bench, let's count on that reference. Let's refer to that. because you can spin your wheels and not get anything done, second guessing your design decisions. But once you've made these steps and you have a reference, it's easy to kind of count on that for giving you direction as you go throughout the process.
That's really interesting. Like it stops you from going too far back.
Right. Because you can always change. I mean, you can do whatever you want. I could make this thing a circle if
And that's
I
a
wanted
big
to.
problem.
Yes, it's a huge problem.
That you could, that infinity kind of awaits.
It's the biggest struggle I have personally as a designer, is the endless possibility. It's almost helpful to have constraints. When you're designing original pieces like this, you don't have a client or an interior designer giving you requirements for your project. So you have to give yourself some constraints. Or for me, I defer to my wife, and she's very good at giving constraints, saying, that bench is a foot too long. You're right, it is.
Then you have some direction.
Yes.
It narrows
And you're
down the
making
infinity.
progress. Otherwise, you're just spinning your wheels. You're just designing furniture forever and never coming up with anything, you know.
Let's talk about the struggle.
The struggle, I think we just started talking about that, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We commiserated a little bit about how hard it is to have an idea, maybe to choose an idea, or there's that, and then, well, I shouldn't talk too much.
Well, the having is easy. Having ideas is easy. Everybody's like, I'm an idea guy. I'm an idea gal. I've got all these great ideas. It's like, great, me too. But are those realistic ideas? Are those sellable ideas? Does somebody else appreciate your original inspiration? Are you communicating that properly? You know, the ideas are easy to come by. It's the implementation that's crucial. How do you get from point A to point B? And that's, I think, why we built this exhibit around the process. That's how you get from point A to point B.
We're in the topic of struggle. So where's the struggle in that?
It's the getting there, I think. It's the original ideas. I've got notebooks full and sketchbooks full of ideas, some good, some bad. But to carry that on and to make it, you have to be able to technically make it. I've seen concepts from interior designers that I have high regard for that can't exist with the laws of physics. Literally, you cannot make this, and you try to explain it to them, and they're like, well, yeah, but what if we did this? And it's like, no, this is impossible. This is physically impossible on the planet Earth. So you have to kind of, you have those steps all along the way. Is it physically possible? Is it aesthetically pleasing? Is somebody going to want to buy this thing? You know, can I find this material even sometimes?
You told me that the building is the easy part.
Yes, for me.
How
yes.
can that be?
That's all I've done day in, day out for 18 years. So for me to go into the shop and build something is like brushing my teeth. That's easy for me. The hard part, the struggle, is how do I share my inspiration? How do I put the beauty I see into a piece of furniture, whether it's one thing or another? I guess, like, maybe an example would be helpful to take something from in here, like this, the pull for this cabinet here. This is something that's very nostalgic for me, and it's called the Zenith sideboard because it reminds me of the channel changer on my TV when I was a little kid.
A Zenith TV where you it's got this,
or whatever one
this
you had.
fin that you turn.
And it's gigantic, this wood cabinet monstrosity.
That's like a light bulb that just,
Yeah.
you just made something happen in my brain.
That's what the struggle is. How do you make that happen in somebody's brain? And it took a lot of steps to get there, and it's not necessarily that thing, but that's my inspiration. That's the root of that pull. Otherwise, you just put a knob on this thing and call it a piece of furniture. There's something more to it. And even the leg design, it harkens back to that era when we used to have to get up, and it was always, I had a littler sister, so I could always make my little sister do it, you know.
She's the remote control.
Yes, but then we also had an antenna outside, and one of us would have to go turn the antenna, and somebody would knock on the window, and
Wait a minute, are you saying this is a television?
Well, this is going to sit under a television, right? This is the modern day cabinet TV, except your TV's a flat screen now that sits on a wall, almost like a painting. So this is interpreting that idea, this big cabinet TV, but it's a different thing now.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just trying to carry that inspiration through. That's the struggle. How do I express that? Like you just felt it when we were talking. You're like, oh, the zenith with the thing.
It's a TV. I
Right.
didn't know it was a TV.
Right. Yeah. And there's more, just as much as all of these things are in a process, there's more to this piece that will come in the future as I refine the design. But that's the idea. That's the root of it. We used to have these TVs that were a piece of furniture, and now our TVs are, I don't even know what you say, a piece of art on the wall.
No, it's like a piece of glass. It's just a piece of glass.
That's a good way to put it.
There's nothing there.
So where's the furniture? Here's the furniture. You know, here's the furniture.
Well, must there be furniture?
Well, I still have like a bunch of stuff, Wi-Fi, DVD player, Xbox, you know, all that stuff that comes with it. And we got to have a place to put that stuff too.
Yeah, but I'm asking a big question. You're a furniture maker, right? We're seeing things that are extravagantly toiled over mentally and physically. Why should there be furniture? Why couldn't it be milk crates?
I don't know that it can't.
How do you justify the existence of these objects?
I don't. All right. I don't. That's somebody else's job.
You just dodged my punch.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely don't, especially luxury furniture. I don't have high-end furniture in my home. Most people don't. I don't know how to justify this. This is what I've done for a living for the longest time, and I've made furniture for clients all over the world. And I've been to some of their homes, and I see how the type of thing I do fits into that. But the honest answer is this type of thing is not a part of my life. It's not a part of most people's life. Luxury furniture is a very specific thing for a very specific person, like a luxury car or a $5,000 purse, you know, or gator skin boots. That it's not for me.
That's very interesting.
It's very interesting to do every day too. to know that you're doing something you'll never behold, you know, you'll never experience. I can't afford the furniture I build. I just can't. It's
fantastic.
Yeah, and for me to justify it, all I can do is say it's like fine art, you know.
Yeah.
There are people that this is for.
That's true. I can't afford a bronze sculpture.
No, you can't afford what you do either.
You're right.
I mean, yeah. What are we doing?
Having a blast, I suppose.
Yeah. And I think that's
living
important.
a life a certain way.
But also, I think people have this apprehension towards expensive furniture, but in 1 year, you spend on your cell phone bill what a coffee table would cost, you know, a really nice coffee table. And that coffee table, you can hand down to your kids.
It's going to outlast your phone.
Yeah, well, I would hope so, yeah. I don't know. It's luxury furniture, you know. I'm not making any excuses for it.
I'm not trying to make an enemy. Because I love this.
Yeah, me too.
I want to hear you love it too.
I do love it.
Why do you love it?
I think it's important if you're capable of it. Like, family and I just had a really nice dinner tonight. And we could have eaten at McDonald's. I'm sure the kids would have preferred that. But instead, we went out for a nice dinner. Is it the same thing in essence? You know, did we eat meat and vegetables and grains and our tummies full? Yeah. But it's not the same thing. And it's the same with commodity-based furniture versus luxury furniture. Is it going to hold your books? Yeah. Can you eat supper off of it? Yeah. but it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing as an heirloom piece of furniture that's going to be passed down through generations, or something that uses beautiful materials in the most honest way, with the most integrity you can impart to them as a builder. That's a lot more than the furniture I get from IKEA, you know. It's a different thing. There's commodity and then there's art, and they're just two different worlds. I'm not a consumer of this furniture, so that's why it's hard for me to say, what's the point of it? I'm a bad salesman, obviously, but
you're a great craftsman.
and I
My
like to let the
goodness.
work speak for itself. I mean,
goodness.
like, I want the pieces to tell their own story, and it's great to have these accessories with them. So you see a little bit of the genesis of it, you know. But yeah, I'm not a furniture salesman. I'm not an interior designer. You know, I'm a furniture designer. I'm a furniture maker, and I like to let the pieces speak for themselves. And if I've done it right, it does. Just like the channel changer from the old TV, it speaks to you. Maybe you didn't even know why you liked that pull, but.
You showed me some pictures of things you've made in the past, back in Colorado. The thing I want to get around to is how is it that that people commission you, find you? How do you get work?
Well, I'm working on that part. I've been lucky enough to work for a lot of big companies over the years. In Colorado, the entirety of my career, I started a business out there, and a lot of what you do as a woodworker is word of mouth. So you know somebody that knows somebody. It's not what you know, it's who you know, is the old saying. But typically, my day-to-day back then, I show up, I have a purchase order on my bench, and I just start making furniture. So I was doing a lot of the making and not a lot of the sales, definitely none of the client communication. I was fortunate to show up every day and just do the woodworking part of it. So there's a showroom model that's existed for years. The Denver company I worked for most recently has a big showroom presence in Denver as well as all over the United States. So interior designers will work with those showrooms. They're affiliated with fabric producers, they're affiliated with architects. So it's a bit of a community that's generated. And that company, I think, had been in business for about 35 years. So there was a history there and just a consistent workload that we had.
But now you're here.
Now I'm here, yeah, and here. Part of my campaign and my motivation going forward is just refocus on sales, marketing, and notoriety. I can make this furniture all day in my shop, and if nobody knows about it, what good is it gonna do? So the reason I'm here tonight is not only to kind of let all the younger generation know this is something you can do for a living, but to get my name out there locally. I think that's the first step, is I've gotten a little business locally. As I said, I'm still working with Cala up in New Ulm, and that'll be kind of the way I refocus going forward after this gallery showing, is to reconnect with some of those local resources. And then a little less local in Minneapolis, there are pieces I have in a showroom there that I made at the last company I worked for. So I have a little bit of a foot in the door with that showroom. And then the big thing is to get an online presence. That's more important now than it's ever been. So it's a little bit out of my realm of expertise, but that's also a very crucial thing for me to do going forward, getting good images of these and Instagram and online showrooms and things like that. So
I spent some time with a very accomplished potter, Richard Bresnahan, at St. John's University, and he told me being a potter in residence means that he gets the privilege of spending 2% of his time doing pottery.
Right.
And there's everything else. You know, there's this romantic idea that you're just like, you're working all the time, you're like living the dream, but what you're describing sounds like that. You can do this, you want to do this, but you have to do so many other things.
Yeah.
Is there a percentage that comes to mind of your life that you get to do woodworking?
That I get to, that's why
To do it the way you want to do it.
That's why I'm still working up in New Ulm
Yeah.
at Cala. That's my therapy. That's really where I go to do woodworking and nothing else. I do a little project management up there and some other things, but I don't, other than this exhibit, I haven't done any woodworking. You know, it's been business, business, business. I used to be a woodworker, now I'm a small business owner. And that's a hard transition for me to make. I haven't quite made it. But yeah, you don't get to do what you love, but at the same time, you're building something bigger. And someday I hope to teach. I love teaching people how to do this type of thing. So that's my goal. If I can't spend every day woodworking, hopefully I can build a brand that fosters the next generation that's more of a legacy than just pieces of furniture in rich people's houses. I've done plenty of that. And you come to a point in your career where that's just not fulfilling anymore. I feel like I have more to offer. So it's a sacrifice for me personally, but I think philosophically it's necessary for me to build this business and to be something more than just a furniture maker, to build something more than just furniture, if that makes sense.
It does. I wonder if your mentality transfers. I sense a great deal of care in the objects that you're making. You've talked about the way that they last, that they're an heirloom piece, and now you're talking about your life in a similar way, that you want to iterate, you want to craft something that has lasting value. Maybe something invisible that has lasting value.
I think another, probably the most crucial role I have in my life is as a father. And I think when you're a father, you can't help but have bigger concerns than, what am I doing as an artist? You got to make breakfast. I mean, when they're little especially, you got to change diapers, you got to kiss boo-boos. It's a lot to being a father that you put everything else to the side. But now I have the opportunity as my kids grow to have my son in the shop and think, well, what am I leaving for him? You know, if I teach him the skills, that's one thing, but if there's a business, if there's an entity, if there's a brand, I think that's another thing entirely.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room.
The elephant in the room, yes. Is it the amount of facial hair that's up here having a conversation?
Between two plants?
Yeah, between two ferns, yeah.
No, why is there an elephant in the room? Why is the show called that? Why is there an elephant in the room?
Honest answer, I didn't know if you would put that elephant up if I just brought it here with all my fine furniture. Thought you might put it in a closet somewhere, like this doesn't quite.
So it's your way of just like.
I thought if I name it after the
piece.
elephant, it'll be there for sure.
That's an honest answer.
Yeah, the elephant in the room. I mean, that's my favorite piece, rocking elephant that I made for my daughter. It's by far the most meaningful thing I've ever made in my life. And I've made insane things that you wouldn't believe.
Insane things.
But that means more to me, you know, for your little girl to sit on it and say, "Daddy, I love my elephant." It's like, come on, you know. I was trying to get her to sit on it tonight just to see if you would notice, but yeah, she respects the podium.
I'm not a warden or.
But yeah, what would you like to know about it specifically?
Well, you know, I'm trying to get you to say the things you just said.
Done and done.
Worked.
I mean, maybe we could talk a little bit about the process of that, because that's an interesting kind of something I learned in industrial design school process. I had the idea in my little notebook years before I was married even, I think. and then I finally rehashed it. And when my daughter was just a baby...
You had a rocking elephant in your notebook years before you were married.
Do you want to know the story?
I think I do.
Okay. Well, these were the party years. These were the...
Okay.
Yeah.
Do I?
I had a good friend with a studio apartment, and it was halfway between the bar and my house, so you can imagine how we ended up there once in a while. And you could either sit on his bed, or on a filthy pile of laundry, or on this rocking elephant that his uncle had built him many years ago.
Oh, wow.
And it was a far departure from what you're seeing there. It was a very rudimentary thing, but I spent a few nights sitting on there having drinks and solving the world's problems. So
All right.
finally, when my daughter was born, I was still working in that same sketchbook, and it was something I would flip past once in a while. And I said, let's do this thing. Let's make it. I had some cutoffs from some tables I had made for a brewery that I wanted to use for this thing, but I did a prototype, especially because that's a functional thing. You want to see if she can fit on it, if she can rock on it. I don't know if you got the photos from that, but the MDF pieces up there were originally her first elephant that she had when she turned 1 year old, and put her on it, and it fit. And I think that elephant lasted about a year until the parts started to break off and things started to get mangled, and I used those as templates for the next elephant.
Oh, so you're saying the parts on the wall
That was the
were
first elephant.
assembled, and she used to ride that.
That was elephant numero uno.
Okay.
Yeah, and my son, who's older, used to...
It's like Iron Man's different suits.
Yeah, that's the first iteration, exactly.
Okay.
Or Batman, or any man that you prefer, yeah. More of a Batman guy myself.
I like Batman.
But yeah, it actually started with a cardboard cutout that I measured one of her little ride-on toys and drew the cardboard cutout of what I thought a cute elephant would look like, and then made the MDF one, and then, yeah, I went from there. And that's still just a step along the way of what will become probably a more manufacturable piece, something that will be cut with a CNC router that I can kind of...
Are you developing a product?
I have to, right? I mean, it's like I said, I don't know many people buying custom furniture around here, but a product that's sellable, Etsy, something like that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the middle of the road for the journey of that
I
elephant.
thought maybe you were just going to make it bigger and bigger as she grows.
I could do that. Would you like one? We could do
Yeah,
one
I'm looking
for
at
you.
college students like,
Yeah.
I mean, you had one in college.
Well, I've rocked on that one a few times, to tell you the truth.
Sturdy.
Yeah, it's
Sturdy.
sturdy enough. Yeah, sturdy enough.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, I like that.
You want to give it a shot?
No. Can we do another piece?
Sure.
Can you give us a tour of another piece around the room?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I kind of explained what happened with this one.
I want to, before you go, I want
Sure.
to point out, this is from your past. Turns out that is too.
Everything is.
Let's go to another one.
Everything is. Let's talk about this console table then. I was just I spoke with Michael. I work with Michael up at New Ulm, and he said that that's a motif that he'd seen, the scallop drawer front, or the scallop apron on that. And that's actually inspired by some sculpture bases I had done for a client years ago. It was in this very Roman-looking thing there's like columns. So I see the front of that as like an unfurled Roman column, in a manner of speaking. And what's older than that? How many times have we seen that motif reiterated?
Okay. Yeah, that's from the past. You're right.
Very far in the past, right? I don't know how many years. The leg of that is based on like a dumpster dive dresser of my wife's. And I said, I kind of like this. Can we do a refined version of this? And I could. And that's what you see the study models up on the pedestal there. It's like, can we do this in the shop? Is this practical? Because that inspiration was from a manufactured piece. They had a cutter head made, and they were just putting chunks of wood through it and getting out that leg profile, I wondered, can I do this in my shop? And I could. And this is birthed from that too. Mm-hmm. This is the same leg profile that I did on this leg here. So, I mean, everything's kind of building in a way. Everything comes from somewhere. Sometimes you can't remember, but that's why I like to keep my sketchbook. I like to keep these maquettes. I like to keep all my notes. So where did this come from? And sometimes you revisit it, But yeah, I think it all comes from the past, right? There's nothing new under the sun, as they say. Mm-hmm. So,
do another one. This is fun.
The bench. I think you can see in the drawings, I followed, I don't know if it's self-explanatory, but there were some benches outside of my children's school in Lake Crystal, and I was like, oh, this could be a neat, let's elevate this, let's make this elegant, modern, and I got all the way to the very end of the process. I even made a CAD file. You're talking about maybe 50 or 60 hours of design work. And I got to the end and I'm like, this sucks. I hate this. It doesn't say anything to me. It doesn't do anything. So that was something that was a grind. And that's what all those little notebook pages are. This idea itching at me every day. I'm cooking dinner. I'm like, oh, what about this? Bust out the notebook and jot it down. And you can see how it subtly transitioned from this blocky kind of thing put together into this more organic shape. I came up with the refined leg design, drew another CAD file and used that to make my templates. And then, as I said earlier, my wife decided it was not the right size. So I had to respond to her design prompts and adjust it from there. But yeah.
That's about taste. You said earlier, something will hold your books or you can eat your meal on it or whatever. The function remains.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I could have just painted the 2x4 one, I guess. Why didn't I do that?
Well, you still can.
Sure.
It's not too late.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to a segue myself, is that a lot of the pieces I have here, with the exception of this veneered piece and a couple others, they're all made from some locally sourced black walnut that I got, that I got from a mill that's about 10 minutes from my house. It was one of the first contacts I made when we moved to Minnesota. And he had this stack of walnut in his garage, and I've worked with walnut my entire career, and as soon as I saw it, I knew it was special. And I bought as much as I could afford, and then I ended up buying it all. I just bought it all. And I whittled down about half of the pile to do what you see here tonight, and that wood kind of just speaks to me as a woodworker. That's why you see a lot of more organic shapes or things like the scalloped apron of that console. That wood just has a soul. There's something more to it. I love the walnut veneer that I made this case out of. I did my best to do it justice, but frankly, it pales in comparison to the solid walnut that I used in this exhibit. It's a very special tree that this wood came out of, and that bench and the organic nature of it, as opposed to where I started with the more blocky, rigid design, came out of the nature of that wood.
So I said it's taste, right? And your response is sort of like honor the material.
Right, and I can't do anything. This kind of goes back to why I don't know why people buy expensive furniture. It's the same thing. I'm doing my job the best I can, and it's my job to do justice to the ingredients and to the original design inspiration, and the beauty will be in the eye of the beholder. If I've done my job right, then that piece will sing. Then that wood will be beautiful on its own. Well, relatively speaking, it didn't come out of the tree like that, but
yeah. But it participates somehow.
I think it is the star. It's the star of the show, and it's like I talked earlier about, we could have gone to McDonald's, instead we had a nice dinner. The beef is from a cow. it's what you do with that beef to make it, to justify its existence, you know. I don't know if that cow wants to be a McDonald's hamburger. I don't know if that cow even wants to be a really nice steak, frankly, but yeah, I mean, you got to do your best as the chef to take those ingredients and do them justice.
So if you're gonna make it
right. Yeah, do your best.
and that board especially, I feel the struggle.
That bench was a struggle.
Where you've got a path, you're pretty sure of it, and then that's just an awful sinking feeling like,
Yeah.
this isn't it.
Yeah, but when you look back, you know all that part that wasn't it was necessary, because you wouldn't have gotten to it without all the garbage.
There's
Need that.
so much about you that's inefficient.
Yeah, I mean, any artist, I would say, is probably the most inefficient profession there is.
Yeah.
Other than I don't know. I won't.
We don't need to make enemies.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, this is blissfully inefficient.
Yeah, I think art is inefficient. But at the same time, if you're creating, you're happy. So is it inefficient? If I'm not doing anything to push a piece of furniture forward, I'm not happy. You know, I'm almost miserable. I'm definitely more miserable not making mistakes than I am making mistakes. You know. Is that too much?
Yeah, I got to do that
Is that too
algebra.
heavy?
Untangle that. Wow. Yeah. More miserable not making mistakes than you are making mistakes.
Sure.
More miserable, in other words, not doing this work.
Yeah, contemplating, speculating. Those are necessary parts of the design process, but I'm doing my best when I'm putting pen to paper or running things, you know, through prototypes in
You're
the
in
shop.
motion. You're
And
doing
also
a thing.
you have a reference for those mistakes that you've made. You can revisit mistakes over and over in your mind, but until you lay it out, you don't know how bad you're doing. And everything builds, you know, all those mistakes build into something wonderful, I mean, or maybe not, you know. There are projects that have been years in the making that I haven't fully realized. I just haven't made enough mistakes yet to get there, you know.
That feels familiar. I have a lot of that too. You know, just to complete it, we've got one more sort of zone that, well, and then you brought the box today too.
That was just,
over
where
here.
did it go?
It's over
Yeah,
here,
that
by
was
the
just a special thing that I had my wife clean all the jewelry out of her jewelry box. I figured I better bring it in or I'd get in trouble. You know? But yeah, that piece, I meant to bring the supplemental sketches for that. That was one that was very neat and tidy. I had an idea in the notebook, sketched it out, drew some measured drawings, had the teak, and just made it, you know? And it was a very streamlined process, much as this coffee table was. I worked with Cherry Creek, it's a local contractor here in town. I had an idea floating around in my head for a mid-century style coffee table. They wanted something round. I said I have this beautiful black walnut. And so I did the prototype. Took it to their showroom. They said maybe an inch shorter, maybe 2 inches shorter, something like that. And boom, that prototype turned into templates.
That's the one we see, the plywood prototype?
Mm-hmm. Those templates turned into the round table. And then the fundamental idea I had was the rectangular table, which I made for our own house in the spirit of the same design. So that was something I didn't struggle that hard with, in a manner of speaking. It was part of a more streamlined design process, which is nice. But that's not always how it goes. You know, that's often not how it goes. So,
can you give us a glimpse into your shop? How would we do that? Do you have philosophy about layout? Do you have philosophy about tools? What kind of processes do you engage in?
I have a very humble shop. It's in the back of an old Quonset building, hence the name of my company, Quonset Studios. When we moved in, the roof didn't hold out the water. All my tools were under a tarp for that first spring. I don't know if you remember spring a year ago, it rained every day for like 3 months or something. It was terrible. Very discouraging, but pulled it together, and it's a very capable yet modest woodworking shop. It's about
That sounds like you.
yeah, capable but modest. I don't know if that's the case, but it's about 3/4 the size of this room. Yeah, and I've got your basic woodworking equipment. I work more with hand tools than most furniture makers do. I just find it more peaceful, less dusty, noisy. You know, when you're running a power tool, it's vibrating, the dust collector's on, you've got glasses, a respirator, ear protection. So I work with hand tools a lot. I do spend a lot of time in the design phase prototyping, so I've got a nice bench there, poorly lit. Yeah.
Well, a draft, iterations, right?
My shop's very much in part of the process too.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything. You've got to, I've realized, especially since moving here, it'll be 2 years this spring, you've really just got to grind it out and chip away at your problem every day because it's so overwhelming. The scope of build a sideboard, like, geez, like where do I start? How big? What size? What material? How, all these different things. If you just chip away one piece at a time and kind of make progress, that day-to-day isn't so bad, It can be fulfilling.
You get a little bit done.
Sometimes a lot of it. Sometimes you take like 10 steps back. Sometimes you go out and there's like fuel pouring out of your tractor and you don't know where it's coming from. Yeah. So there are those days too, or the cat got locked in the shop all night and started tearing the insulation out. That has happened more than 3 or 4 times now. So yeah, you chip away.
So that changes your day.
It did. And now I'm like, whatever. I don't even fix it. I just wait until the next time the cat tears out insulation.
That's going to happen.
Yeah.
I was looking at this notebook page,
okay.
And I wondered if I'm doing this right, because you told me you date the pages,
mm-hmm.
and you told me that the notebook is the place where you put your idea first.
Right.
So is this the first drawing of this concept?
Probably not. Probably.
The reason I ask is because it's from December 1st of this, a month ago.
Uh-huh.
Are
you asking if I made this
I'm getting a
just
sense
now?
of your pace. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when did you email me about this exhibit?
We talked last year in the same room.
But that was, so what I remember was thinking we're shooting for the spring. And I think you emailed me in July.
I said, well,
and said,
in January.
Are you ready for January?
Yeah, and right, teachers talk about spring as like starts in January.
So,
spring semester, sorry.
All of this has happened since then.
All of this has happened since this summer.
And that's not even considering, all the other things that have happened. Working up at Cala, splitting wood, fixing the tractor. I came in the other day, I had to fix the truck. This has been those evenings after the kids go to bed, those weekends. So I guess you would have to be more specific about the question on pace.
No, you did it again. Like you answered the question.
Yeah. It doesn't take me long to do the woodworking. If I've got something like this, I can turn around a piece pretty quick in the shop.
Just a quick count tells me that you average about one a month.
And these are all original designs, is something to remember too. The design is probably 80% of the time I spent.
Do you have, we talked about the elephant maybe becoming a product.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, we've talked about prototypes that come before the thing we see. Are we seeing prototypes that intend to be a product that's offered?
These are all prototypes. These, the Cherry Creek table exists in the Cherry Creek showroom. So that sits in their showroom. That's for them. I owe it to myself and to my very patient wife to have some nice furniture in our house. So some of these will sit in our house. but they're prototypes for sales through Instagram, on the website, building my catalog, building my brand. But none of these, well, that's not true. I would sell any one of them and just build another one. You know what I mean?
If anybody's interested.
Right, yeah, I don't want to miss a sale
For your
tonight.
dorm.
But this walnut is super special. And it came, from Blue Earth County where we live now. I love the idea of building furniture that's local, from local materials. There's not a big local market. So these pieces, a lot of them are probably going to live in my home. But yeah, I think what you're asking is this a step to the next iteration of this piece of furniture? And yes, it is, very much.
Right. So you need to photograph these, you need to
Market.
do the business end of things.
Right,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, but there are things that I did wrong when I did these. So I'll have to do it right next time. You're always looking to be more efficient when you're building things with materials and the time you spend to build them. Maybe the proportions aren't landing quite right with you. Maybe you didn't have the right material at the time to do it exactly the way you wanted. So
if I pull the Greeley bench out of the conversation and bring it over here and say, you struggled in the conception of that. You were going a direction, you realized it looks like a xylophone, I don't like it.
yeah.
And then you got it. Now you got it, right? Or close. Like to make another one. How long does it take to make another one?
That'd probably be, I would estimate 32 hours of building.
That was pretty fast. 32 hours, and you told me you work about 3 hours a night.
Well,
Build a fire.
and then I work all day on Saturday, all day on Sunday. If I have 2 days off
So
during the
we're
week.
a couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I
Maybe
could
2 weeks?
do a bid for you right now if you'd like. Give
I
me
think
your
you just
email.
did,
Yeah. The other thing about that material, though, it's very special. You're not going to find that level of walnut everywhere. So it might take me 32 hours to build that out of X material, but to find it out of that very special walnut, you're going to have to pay a premium, if I am quoting this for you.
No. That's not what's happening. So
That's not what's happening.
you described the xylophone detour.
Yeah, I
as
don't know
about-
what happened with that.
No, it's about 50 some hours.
Maybe more.
And then you change direction and you put in more hours in
Yeah.
getting it right. And now you're saying to build one, after all that design work, to build one is
4
less.
days.
Yeah. No, I think students need to know that. You need to hear that. The front loading is the weight. That's the hard part. The concept, finding an elegant solution. The execution is like, it's like sledding. Like you got to go up the hill and then you get to have fun for a little while.
Well, think about it this way, though. I've been designing and building custom furniture for 18 years. Most of those days have been in the shop, building, learning from... I was the least experienced guy when I left the shop in Denver. So I'm learning from people that have made furniture for 3 decades. So for me to go into the shop and build that in 32 hours, that's not to say that I could teach you how to go into the shop and build that in 32 hours. It's a very...
I understand that.
So there's
it's a
more
proportion that I'm highlighting.
But you're right, that it's very, for what I do and what's meaningful to me is to front load, because I don't want to waste this walnut experimenting. I want to have all those problems solved, all those mistakes made before I go into the shop and build. And I put on the headphones, put on my tunes, and just make furniture. And that's
Flow state.
That's my favorite
You're in the
part.
zone.
Yep. Yeah, that's the best part for me.
Because you know how to do this.
Yep.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think anybody struggles when you start designing a piece of furniture, you don't know what you're doing. And if you do, then you're probably not designing a piece of furniture. You're probably ripping something off, or you're probably just remaking something that somebody else has made, which is fine. It doesn't make any difference to me. I've done plenty of that, you believe me. There are pieces of furniture that I made for 4 different companies, the exact same piece of furniture. And it's not an uncomplicated dining table. It's very fussy, probably almost 60 hours, and I made it for 4 different companies. The exact same design.
You ripped yourself off.
Well, it was them. I was making an hourly wage. I could care less what I was doing. So, yeah. That for me, it's important to have a new design, a unique design. Even though I might have stepped on some people's toes along the way, I can source all of my designs to that little notebook page. It's progression through the sketchbook and the prototypes, and it's important to me to have that piece of furniture, if I'm telling the story, to have the whole story there, you know.
So what I hear emerging from this is respect. I think you respect your material, you respect your audience, the people who might be looking at this, and you respect your process. It's worth doing well. It's worth caring. Can you help us? We don't have a furniture building or design program or an industrial design program here. Can you help us know how to look at your work respectfully? Can you teach us what to look for, what to notice? What do you want us to see in these objects?
Well, furniture, particularly custom furniture, can be mostly 2 things. And it's hard to say that here in the gallery, it's one thing. And it's art, it's sculpture almost. As it sits in the gallery, you can see the process and the reality of it. But this is all for someone's home. And it can either blend in to an existing interior, a side table that you barely notice, or it can be the focal point of an entire room. In essence, if you're doing a piece of furniture right, even if it is that focal point, it should be subtle. It should be proportioned appropriately. The colors should be appropriate for the interior. No piece of furniture is an island. You don't walk into a room and it's just a piece of furniture. Furnitures are always integrated with interiors, with walls, with floors, artwork. So furniture should almost go unnoticed unless it's something really, spectacular as a focal point. And for me, I hope that that's evident in the pieces, that the proportion is not unsettling, that even the console table, it's a tall piece of furniture, but it's proportioned in a way that makes sense. It doesn't look gangly or stocky. The colors are rich, but not gaudy. Furniture should have a subtle beauty. Years ago, I wrote in my college sketchbook, subtle pow, and did pow like a comic book, Like it should pow, but it should be subtle. It shouldn't like punch you in the face. It should be a subtle pow, and that's kind of my philosophy, Beauty, I think, always has that subtle pow.
It's fantastic.
I don't know about that.
No, it's fantastic. Any questions? Yes.
You talked about this a little bit, but just these are very different than what we've seen from Cala. Can you talk about how you turn different parts of your brain on and off, I guess, when working on something like this or something like a Cala table where, drastically different, less meticulous design, I assume, for Cala stuff?
Cala is part of what I see as the live edge kind of natural material driven market. And I've worked up there for, I think October was a year now. And I've done all sorts of different stuff. And what we do up there is very driven by the material we have, even more so than what I do, especially with the live edge furniture. What I do is more furniture, like more of a traditional furniture. So you're making a box or you're making a coffee table. At Cala, we're making this slab of walnut into a desk, or taking these, today I was working on a coffee table all day, and I'm taking a bunch of slices of walnut and kind of arranging them. Do you remember those pieces that had, so it's very organic in that way. This is more rigid and driven by function, I would say, and proportions. When you have a slab of wood, you can't really do much about that, right? You can cut it to length and maybe rip off the edges, but when you're working with basic materials, you can make any proportion, any size. I would say my brain's probably more readily geared towards this type of thing, but as I've worked with Harold at Cala, I've kind of learned to appreciate that organic part. Those cubes that we do, I make a ton of those, and it's super fun. I know I'm gonna have a chill day if I go up there and I'm making cubes, you know, because you're just you're fitting these live edge organic things together. And another thing we do a lot of up there is, like, we're doing kitchen cabinets now and architectural interiors, and I think I mentioned earlier, that's just woodworking for me on a daily basis. This is the problem solving, the designing, and that's a very good question. They're very different worlds. Yeah, it's obvious. Yeah.
I have so many questions, but I
Go,
restrain myself. No, I've had so much time. Yeah.
I'm curious, the language you use, the process you follow, it's all very artistic, you might say, and you described the furniture as a form of sculpture. Why not just be a sculptor? What is it about furniture that keeps you, could we say, utilitarian minded?
I think when I went to college, I had that same question. I basically discovered industrial design as kind of the solution to that very question. I wanted to be an artist, I think, but I didn't know if I could earn a living as an artist. So this is a way for me to be an artist and kind of have a steady living, I guess. I do see a lot of what I do as more sculptural and artistic, but I feel like if I'm laboring, if I'm getting to work every day and getting dusty and earning a paycheck, I feel like, I'm a working man, you know? And I feel like as a sculptor, just like when I'm designing these pieces, there's this fear of impending doom, like, what if I never earn another penny in my life, you know, because I'm just making beautiful things. So furniture is a way for me to do something profitable with my talent as an artist. But yeah, there's a quote, I didn't know if this would come up before, but there was a quote that I had written down that said, someone that works with their hands is a laborer. Someone that works with their hands and their head is a craftsman. And someone that works with their hands and their head and their heart is an artist. And that rang very true for me. I like to incorporate all three of those profiles into every piece I do, but I think the artist is the one that's got the most fear and the most vulnerability, the most risk. You know, people obviously earn a living as sculptors, but I don't know if I've got the chops for that. I don't know.
Questions? Yes.
What do you do with the leftover scraps from a project?
Well, they usually are incorporated. So like the scraps from a coffee table top might become the coffee table legs. The scraps from the legs might become the stretchers that are kind of hidden underneath the coffee table. I've got kind of plans for some of the scraps, especially the really nice walnut I have, but that remains to be seen. I'd like to do a little kind of Etsy thing, make some jewelry, make some little sculptures, make some little things, but I'll tell you one thing I don't do is throw them away. I keep all those scraps, and especially some of the nicer things, like you've seen at Cala, some of the weirdest, hardest to work with wood is some of the most beautiful. So all those things are stashed on the shelf and in the shed, and they'll get, maybe as the kids get older, my son's gotten out there a little bit and started to tinker around with things, so we'll put those in his hands with a little whittling knife and see what he can do with them.
So even the really small pieces you keep, you don't just throw them in the fire?
Oh, it gets to the point of diminishing returns. Like, I won't keep a little, I don't know. I do have pieces that are like this big, not gonna lie. Like, just if something's really pretty you know, I'll keep it. And I've got plenty of space on the farm, so I just stash it away somewhere. And yeah, it's a problem. It starts to pile up. But that's a good question. Yeah, usually it doesn't end up in the fireplace. That's the place for firewood only. So yeah, do my best not to burn, especially the nice walnut.
Well, we're a couple minutes over. We'll take our last question.
One quick one.
Mhm.
Talking to a room full of people, maybe I shouldn't speak for everyone else, but if you ask me what does it make, I'd say wood.
Mm-hmm.
It's wood, everybody knows it's wood. But I wouldn't have known it's walnut. And let's say it's walnut, I wouldn't have known what a nice walnut is.
Sure.
To a bunch of people who don't know wood, what makes one walnut better than another?
Well, this is walnut, right? And do you see how the base is like rich red walnut? You might not be able to see it from where you guys are sitting, but the base is made from the walnut that I got from the local mill. The case is a FSC certified American walnut veneer. They're both finished with a clear finish, but this just, I think, lacks the life and the depth that the other walnut has. The rich red color, I mean, it's completely, this almost looks green to me in comparison. And then the figuring of the grain, as I worked it, the workability of it was fantastic. Sometimes you get wood that doesn't want to cooperate. And to have planks that I use for the tops of these pieces of furniture that are clear and without knots and without issues and that are 7 to 8 inches wide is pretty special. So yeah, I think the color and the grain pattern is pretty outstanding as far as what I've used over my career.
Like finding a vein of really white marble, something like that.
Yeah, natural materials are like that. They're natural. You can't fake it, you know. So I'm really fortunate to have this stack of walnut, and I think I said I've gone through about half of it. So I'm going to try to keep most of these pieces in our home. Hopefully they can be passed down to the kids and then to their kids someday, because I think it's really special material. So I don't know, Michael, you've worked with a lot of walnut at Cala with us. Wouldn't you say this is distinctly different from a lot of the stuff?
I have noticed that we've milled our own walnut at home, and the first thing we noticed was like, wow, these are some really rich colors. Like
Mm-hmm.
some blue in there and a lot of purple, and it's just incomparable to what you buy.
Right. And see, Michael's a woodworker, so it's not a fair question to ask it, but yeah.
Well, you said you can't fake it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for caring deeply about your work. Thank you for being here. And I want to land this plane. Let's give him a round of applause.